berarti timingnya tetap ya? Tetap 40, 20.
Oke. Jadi nanti mungkin aja di-cut di bagian itunya aja, Pak. Misalnya
Discussion.
Iya, discussion.
Oke.
Kalau enggak pas presentasi juga boleh dikasih waktu 25 atau 20 aja nggak apa-apa.
20. Berarti berapa? 20? 40. Keynote speaker kan 40 ya?
Ya, harusnya 40.
Heeh.
Mungkin 20 terus
20, 15 gitu ya.
15 boleh.
Oke. 15 sama 15 gitu ya.
Boleh nggak apa-apa.
Oke, yang speaker yang kedua.
Mbak Sisi.
Soalnya ini kan udah lewat ya.
Iya, betul, Pak. Cuma dari awal agak karat kan.
Nanti ngejar kan.
Jam berapa, Pak?
Yes, gampang.
Mungkin nanti Bapak di sini. Ini ada kertas buat misalnya Bapak butuh apa-apa.
Oke, thank you.
Ya. Oke.
Tulisannya sih.
Pak, ini tadi yang tadi aja sih, Pak.
Yang
sesi
sekarang?
yang
Ini
sekarang
Yang tadi.
cuman aku lupa ngenalin yang ada slide itu di pertama atau sebelum ini? Sebelum tulisan presentasi.
Sebelum presentasi.
Oh, oke.
Mungkin nanti kami serahkan ke Bapak untuk
Iya.
melanjutkan ya, Pak.
Bentar, Mas.
Oke.
Berarti keynote speaker itu aslinya 40 ya?
Iya.
40. Kalau speaker
Sama ya, Kak.
enggak, beda kok.
Totalnya.
20.
Oh,
20 sama.
untuk waktunya.
Oh, sama ya?
Iya, sebenarnya sama semua. Jadi mungkin pembagiannya aja yang mungkin dibedain.
Oke.
Ladies and gentlemen, the next session is going to start in 2 minutes, so please be seated. All the participants who will be in this outside, please join us in this room again. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? Our session is about to begin, so please have a nice seat. Thank you so much. The Excellencies, participants, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the International Symposium on Wildlife Biodiversity Conservation in this session, which is the keynote and invited speech sessions. And I'm deeply honored to serve you as your host for this remarkable event. We are come together to explore and address the critical challenges facing our planet's biodiversity. But today, as the host, our role is to officially open these sessions, but the true guiding force for our symposiums will be our distinguished chairpersons, who will lead us through the sessions and discussions to follow. But before I introduce our chairpersons, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge and express our gratitude to all the sponsors that have made this event possible. To our sponsor, which are April Group, Global Environmental Facility in partnership with UNDP, our United Nations Development Program, and combating illegal wildlife trade, Peat and Mangrove Restoration Agency of the Republic of Indonesia, Borneo Nature Foundations, Tabobanica, the Journal of Asian Biodiversity, and Fauna and Flora International, Copenhagen Zoo, KLHK, Action Conservation Foundation, and Pesona Indonesia Tours. Now, without further ado, it is our privilege to introduce our chairpersons of these sessions, a respected leader in the field of conservation who will expertly guide us through the session and discussion to come.
We have arrived to the Symposium 6 Partnership and Collaboration in Wildlife Conservation in the keynote and invited speaker that expertly guided by Hariawan Agung Wahyudi from Copenhagen Zoo. Please welcome Mas Hariawan.
Please give applause for him.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for attending this session, both on site or also online. And we will be discussing about the partnership and collaboration in wildlife conservation. And we already have 3 experts who will be presenting about these topics. And I think here, fortunately, we have a key person, keynote speakers, who I think who really famous in promoting collaboration in conservation in Indonesia, Dr. Engineer Wiratno, and also we have Professor Dr. Gono Semiadi from National Research and Innovation Agency, who will talk about collaboration, international collaboration, and also we have Arjun Gopalaswamy, Ph.D. From Carnassials Global, will also presenting in this session. And I will invite Bapak Dr. Engineer Wiratno to present the first topic. But before Pak Wiratno start presentation, I would like to introduce. I also don't think I need to introduce, but formally I have to. He was our former General Director of KSDAE, and now he is appointed as head of the 3rd Division FOLU NetSink, Ministry of Environmental and Forestry. We welcome Bapak Wiratno, and the stage is yours. We have 20 minutes, Pak Wir.
Thank you, Chairperson. This is my painting on the with the big art technique, Tarsius. Okay, partnership and collaboration in wildlife conservation. I think it is collaboration is a must for conservation. This is the principle. Lanjut. I just remind you the objective of biodiversity conservation is very important in maintaining the essential ecological process and life support system. It is also stated in the Act number 5, preservation of genetic diversity and sustainable utilization species on ecosystem. There are 3 basic principles. Lanjut. Now, what is important is government cannot work alone, NGOs, civil society, and I call what is important of the collective action. And this is started from the collective awareness. Again, this is my painting. Go ahead. Jatimulyo is a very important example, recent example. In Jatimulyo, they started with only the village regulation, but they implemented very effectively at the ground level. Right? This is the story of Jatimulyo. Yeah, a problem, a long story of Jatimulyo. Before, a lot of hunting and poaching, especially for the bird. Lanjut. And this is the long story until 2015, when they are aware that there is no even single bird in their woodland. And what happened with this situation? They want the ideal situation when they are still young, that the bird, the animal have to go back to their woodland. That is what happened. And then they started with the village regulation. Go ahead. Oh ini, yang ini mana? Yang nextnya? Next. Okay, so this is the movement of grassroots level, and this is very important, and the government have to recognize this. Yeah. Until now, and this is the Jatimulyo. Sorry. And what happened after years of the implementation consistently with no poaching, no hunting, and we can witness in Jatimulyo the many kind of birds coming back, and even not bird, but many animals coming back. And Jatimulyo has become famous as the Desa Wisata. And we are happy that the collective awareness from the grassroots level come to the ideal situation, that bird coming back. And now there is a trend that the village around the Jatimulyo, they also started to have a new regulation, village regulation. A good example also the increasing of population in 69 habitat of Javan eagle. This is the role of the raptor groups. They monitor the Javan eagle everywhere across the Java, and there is indication that Javan eagle also find in Bali. The increasing population of Bali Mina is also a good example of how in situ and ex situ conservation go hand in hand. There are now 300 individu in the national park, before only 9 individu in 2000. Yeah, before even. This is the new movement, or we call it the citizen science. Swiss Vinasis, as before, he was a staff of Baluran National Park. He bird lovers, and he developed the Burungnesia application. And then there are almost 1,000 of the follower and supporter. And when I was at DG, I support him to publish the atlas. Now we have an Burung Indonesia, Atlas of Burung Indonesia, created by the Swiss and the team. This is also the collective action. Example also the restoration from bedrock into green. It took, of course, many years, more than 10 years, until now. You can see, and we supported by Sumitomo Corporation, working with the Ministry of Forest and KSDA office in Jogja. unfortunately only 300 hectare. But it is proven, and I call it, this is the third Wanagama movement. This is the evidence base that the wildlife coming back to that area, Cabe Jawa, and other bird scientists, cekakak sungai, and so on and so forth. So this is the optimism raised when we work together. Another example is very bad situation in Tangkahan near the Losher, and here, and as we compare to the area that without any initiative on ecotourism, community-based ecotourism, and in Tangkahan, Losher is a World Heritage and it's about 800,000 hectare, yeah. And before 2000, they are all illegal loggers. And when they were illegal loggers, they are still poor. So they stop illegal logging and they start the community-based ecotourism. This is the trained elephant, and then elephant became one of the famous tourist attraction, and all managed by the Lembaga Pariwisata Tangkahan. You can see the area, Sekoci is the area where there is a very heavy encroachment, and this is the situation. And Tangkahan you can witness here, and in Tangkahan area, and this is the situation. Even though this is the Sekoci area, Tangkahan is almost flat. There is no illegal logging, there is no poaching. Even when there is a COVID for 2 years, they didn't go back into illegal loggers again, but they still keep on working on ecotourism. This is a good example that the power of community, when we work with them in the right way, they are very supportive to conservation. This is the economic benefit. You can see that very small part going to Jakarta for the entrance fee, but mostly they manage this amount of benefit. The profit from ecotourism go to the community at the 2 villages. This is an example of restoration in Waikambas National Park. And the idea is they plant the trees to provide food for Sumatran rhino. And they convert the grassland into the trees plantation, and they use a copy system, so they cut it to support the Sumatran rhino. This is also a good example how that we can prove, we can restore, at the same time support they provide the food for rhino, because Sumatran rhino, they eat almost like 200 different species. Example of working in the field, this is the Komodo National Park, the World Heritage also. You can imagine this is the Komodo Island, Padar and Rinca. Yeah, and it just to give you an idea how difficult working at the field level to save to protect the wildlife. In the case is Komodo dragon. We have 17 years of monitoring, and for Komodo, National Park supported by the Komodo Survival Program. These guys working with us and put the chip to monitor the Komodo population. Research activities is also very hard working in Komodo National Park. We have a very intensive, what we call it, smart patrol, meaning finding is 15 days a month they are working in the jungle and recording and putting the camera trap and also recording all the situation happen in the park. And then you can find here, like here is the rhino habitat, and another one is also the red one is what? The tiger, orangutan. Distribution is orangutan in the swamp area and orangutan in Tambi Research Station. Yeah, and also tiger. So when we're doing very intensive working at in the park, so we can have data and information special. It's very important to make a priority setting for planning and protection. Important also the traditional wisdom of local community is happen. This is in the Celok Cendrawasih, for instance. We have a sasi meaning that we have to stop harvesting almost 1 to 2 years, and then they open. This is the when I reopen the sasi, and then there are a lot of harvesting at the time after 2 years of sasi. Also women groups, also they are also very eager to help us, and working with the local community is very important, I think, across the national park in the world, also in Indonesia. I launched the conservation partnership, meaning that the local community, because they are poor, they can work with the land already. They work and they encroach the national park, but they have also a duty to support us and protection and so on and so forth, while they can get the harvest of non-timber forest product and other sources from the park. This is the example in Marubedri National Park. The head of National Park, Pak Maman, at the time they stopped illegal logging and they gave alternative for the illegal logger on economic, like mushroom, oyster mushroom and other activities. And in fact, they are successful and they stop illegal logging in the park. The place is very important for macan tutul itu apa? Javan leopard. There is still a lot of Javan leopard in this area, in this national park. There's a new initiative, the role model of Bromo Tengger Semeru National Park. We have edelweiss planted in the village near the park and becoming the new destination of tourists in the Bromo Tengger. Of course, honey harvesting and other non-timber forest product is also very meaningful alternative income generation except illegal logging. It is new initiative on the East Waigeo National Park. This is near Raja Ampat. When you go to Raja Ampat, you can go here. This place is very silent place. It's good for nature healing. And again, it is managed by managed by the managed by the local community. So please find the local champion around the village in the buffer zone or national park. Pak Yopi is the local champion, and they are happy to have me as a visitor and declare this is the area. This is only buffer zone of the East YQ strict nature reserve. So it is still on the buffer zone, but situation is very well maintained and protected by local community. You can see in the situation here, and they also they have an supported by FFI and also even local the authorities. They have declared the Ridge to Reef adventure again by local community. That is the important thing. Anyone who like community-based ecotourism, you can try this place. This is the situation mostly in Sumatra, with our effort and the DG to release tiger. Sometimes we use GPS collar to monitor within 2 years. We can monitor where they go, whether they still alive or not, and so forth. This is the new policy reform I proposed and I implemented with my staff. I declare conservation without borderless conservation. Conservation as a great common agenda and strengthen each other, not weaken each other. Meaning that we have to work with a multi-stakeholder, we have to work with interdisciplinary, we work at a multi-level leadership. We have to implement adaptive collaborative management and learning process, and mentorship at field level is also the key for success. This is a new paradigm, 10 new ways of working, protected area system Indonesia. Like we treat the local people as subject. Yeah, we have to involve them, started from the problem identification, planning, implementation, and so forth. Yeah. Respect human rights. Yeah, and also collaboration in the echelon 1, in the minister, and collaboration across minister level. Yeah. Respect the traditional wisdom and culture. It is also important. Multi-level leadership, again, it is a key success. Scientific-based decision support system. It is not new, but sometimes we forget it about the scientific thing. This is very important. Working at the field level, reward and mentorship, and developing the learning organization. Mainstreaming conservation, there is a structural approach, cultural approach, educational approach, and law enforcement approach. Still very important for the naughty group of the community that they don't want to change their way of life. I think the last slide is about the learning cycle. It is important to be organizational learning. There's a learning cycle. First is the collaboration of multidisciplinary, yeah, expert, government, and target group, and the adaptive collaborative management approach, local, national, global network, and socio-economic partnership, multi-stakeholder scientific-based decision support system for principle of governance, yeah, transparency, participatory, public accountability, and public responsibility. Strong and consistent leadership at all levels. The key is not on the managerial issues, but also the leadership issues. Thank you. I was in the Raja Ampat, the beautiful place on earth, the paradise on earth. Terima kasih.
Yeah. Thank you, Pak Wiratno. We have 10 minutes of discussion. I open for two questions, if any? Yes, one. Any other? Another one question? No? Okay, please.
Only one question.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation, very insightful and, and inspired. Yeah, I'd like to know, how do you collect the data when you did your research? That's my first question. And the second one is, what the most challenging or difficult situation when it's dealing with the wildlife, or when you did the exploration, because you like travel around Indonesia? Could you please share to us? Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Nora. I'm from Research Conservation from BRIN, and nice to meet you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mbak Nora. Bahasa Indonesia atau bahasa Sunda? I was a bureaucrat that developing the concept of four principles. One is regulation based, second is scientific based, the third is experience based, the fourth is evidence based, and the fifth is precautionary principle based. What I did is I developed a WhatsApp group for my staff across Indonesia, and then I will check them without notice. Yeah, we call it belusuan using the WhatsApp. Sometimes I have a video call with my staff. Even when I was already retired, yesterday I got a call. The ex of my staff working on firefighting in Padang Sugian in Sumsel. So very important to cut off the bureaucratic system on communication right to the field. And as long as you have an pulsar and signal, and then I like to communicate with my staff, and particularly I listen their problem, their hope, and their suggestion. So leadership is about listening, not about telling. And I also going to the field quite often when I was a DG, and it is quite difficult. Yeah, because always direct instruction from the minister to do this and that, and between that instruction, that comment, I go to the field check, and I also try to find all the journal, international journal, the scientific journal, and I like developing a participatory planning. So planning have to be communicated, even start from the problem identification from the field. And the second question?
What most difficult situation or most challenging situation when you face?
I think at the first time my staff they were surprised that they got contact directly from the DG. It has never happened before, almost years and years. Yeah, so it's difficult to get the insight and what is the really happen in the field level, because sometimes they like asal bapak senang. What is in English? As long as the boss is fine, okay, good news, always good news, and I don't like this. So the principle of doing what is really happen as we do the triangulation principle. Check, cross-check, and recheck. That's why I have my friends from NGOs and even from the civil society. There are many local champions that until now they're still texting me and WhatsApp me just to say hello, and this is very important. I think communication is the key. And most bureaucrats, they don't like share their cell phone number because they're becoming very busy all the time. Any other question?
Oh yeah.
Silakan.
Not related to, sorry, I have one question that's not related to collaborative work for conservation, but just as a personal question. In your position and all your years of experience, how did you manage to keep that Jiva Conservasi alive when you're entangled with so much of policy making and national level politics and working with so many stakeholders with all these different kind of intents and visions, but how do you keep your own Jiva alive in conservation through all of it, all these years?
Thank you. First, I like doing this from my deep heart. So I use the principle of U theory. I have to open my heart. I have to open my mind, open heart, and open will. It is not easy. Yeah. Eckhart Tolle, the guru spiritual from US, said that if you work in kesadaran, bekerja dengan sadar, mean that you work with, if you work with the conscience and kesadaran apa ya? Consciousness. Working with consciousness, meaning that first you have to enjoy your work. You love your work. And then second is acceptance, the principle of acceptance. You accept what you are in your hand responsibility. You accept, meaning in Indonesia, you work with your dengan ikhlas, yeah, working with acceptance. And working with enthusiasm. There are three principles of working and consciousness. I hold that in my principle of working. And if there is a problem, the answer is there. If the door is closed here, there is always the door open in other places. So I believe that, and a lot of support from anywhere, from everywhere, for any time. When I face a problem, sometimes it's also difficult to explain to the minister, but I have to tell the truth. This is the situation, Ibu Menteri, and then I propose you three priority that we have to take the decision, and I have to responsible for the decision selected by the minister. That is the leader.
Yeah. Okay.
Another simple question? No?
Time is
up.
unfortunately often over, Pak Wiratno. So thank you for presentation and answer the question, and please give applause to Pak Wiratno. If you have a question, please have Pak Wiratno outside the room, yeah. He is always welcome. And we will come into the second presentation. We have Professor Dr. Gono Semiadi on the line. Okay, we are connected already, and Pak Gono is working as a researcher for National Research and Innovation Agency, and the stage is yours, Pak Gono, for a 15 to 20 minutes presentation.
Okay, thank you, moderator, and good afternoon to to the colleague from the attendee. Apologize for not being able to attend physically due to the circumstances in our office. So basically in my speech, I'll try to give some insight or hoping to give some understanding the importance of the one of the global document that Indonesia has ratified, that is the Convention on Biological Diversity. And with this era, it's called as the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. The idea is hoping that understanding the CBD, the importance of the CBD, the content of the CBD, university will get much more involved in providing the output of the research that will support the target of the CBD, in particular for the Indonesia. So the first, I have to bring you back to almost 30 years ago about how the global path on the biodiversity issue is started. It all began in 1992 when the United Nations summit in Rio has agreed to establish what we call it the Convention on Biological Diversity. Since it is under the United Nations, so meaning that countries that will be ratified for the CBD will have to some responsibility to get involved to support any target that has been set by the convention. Indonesia ratified the CBD in 1994, just 2 years after the establishment of the Rio Summit. And within the Rio Summit, the convention then developed what we call it the global target. And for the first time, it called out as the 20 list global target, and it's familiarized as the Aichi target. Under the Aichi target, it is basically about the global target that need to be achieved by the parties to support of the three of the establishments of the CBD. The first one is the conservation of the biological diversity. The second one is about the sustainable use of the component of the biological diversity with the fair and equitable. And last one is about the sharing of the benefit arising from the genetic resources. So those are three aims of the Convention on Biological Diversity. In the meantime, after the Rio Summit, the United Nations also has established what we call it the Sustainable Development Goal. This is more as the universal call to the action to end the poverty, protect the planet, and ensure by the 2030 all people enjoy the peace and prosperity. So there is a close relations between the SDG, what we call it in the abbreviation, to the CBD. Since the CBD has the first one developed for 10 years target, so it end up in 2022. Basically, after the 2020, the CBD has to produce the next global target. But due to the COVID that already happened for almost 2 years, so the following of the Aichi target has come to slightly behind the schedule, and it is not until the end of the December 2022 when the new of the global target has been set up, and this is for the 30 years time frame. And we call it for the replacement for the Aichi target as the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. The 30 years of the target are split into 10 years target. So there's going to be target for 2030, target for the 2040, and the target for 2050. So if you look, please do not look to the complications of the structures, but what I'm trying to give you the idea is that the GBF 2050, there is what we call it 2050 goals and the 2030 target, or we call it the 10 years target. So the 2050 visions or goals is hoping by the 2050, I'm sorry, we are trying to maintaining the biodiversity is value, conserve, restore, and wisely used, maintaining ecosystem services, sustaining a healthy planet, and delivering benefit essential for all people. Those is the 2050 visions. Under those visions, and there are four big goals, what we call it later as the outcome-oriented, what we call it the goal A, B, C, D. What we have to concern is what is the 10 yearly missions that is come into what we call it the 2030 action target, which is about focusing on the actions oriented. So this is the most important for us, for you from the university, for the university students. If you want to have some idea about your project and it is evolving about what the global asks, then this is the opportunity for you to look to the CBD target. In total, there are 23 targets divided into 3 clusters, which is the first cluster is reducing threat to biodiversity. From within the reducing threat to the biodiversity, there are 8 global targets. We will look at individually after this presentations, but what you have to look is what is to familiarize what are the global target needs involving your research activity. The first one, as it is already mentioned, reducing threat. The second one is about the meeting people needs. And the last one is the tools and the solutions. For you, within the university students, perhaps you can focus on the cluster 1, the reducing threat, and the meeting people needs. So within those 23 targets, you can have a look. They are almost divided into 4 big actions. The first 4 target is dealing with the conservations, which is about the biodiversity, inclusive of the spatial planning, about the effective restoration for 30% of the degraded area, and so on. And second group within the target is about avoiding, which is comprised of the 4 global targets, which is about, the first one is in stopping unsustainable use and harvest and threat of the species. The other is reducing the alien species spread up to 50% and so on. And the third group is about the safeguarding, how we have to sustain the management and the use of the species, sustainable use of the agri and aquaculture and fisheries and forestry. Have to look about the target 10. So there is a shifting about the scope of, we call it the biodiversity. Within the global target, biodiversity is not only about the wildlife, but from the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, biodiversity involving any kind of the activity of the any kind of the species that will be affected to the wildlife. Therefore, agricultures, aquacultures that will be take the responsibility and inclusive within the target to be as a global target. Meaning the CBD is no longer only for the biologists and for the quote-unquote wildlife conservationists from the forestry, but it's involving as well the agriculture faculty. The last one, the group, is about the actions, and this is more through the management policy about the mainstreaming and the business. So, as I mentioned earlier, within the biodiversity area, we are not anymore talking only about something wild, but it is involving the inland, whether this is quote unquote in the agricultures or in the forestry. It's deal with the freshwater and marine. It deals with the agricultures, indigenous people, and bioprocessing and utilizations. So biodiversity area within the general global scope is very vast coverage. Now, if you want to ask what is the target of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework within the research scopes, we can look, if you look deeply into the each of the document, it is a global target with ambitious. However, in those ambitious targets, the target need to be really measurable. Therefore, they are using the indexing based. And there is the obligations for the country who ratified the CBD. At the end of each of the cycle, there will be a national report that has to be uploaded and openly to the public. And we need to provide a real-time data as much as possible within a geospatial based form. So understanding about the requirement of how the data need to be collected and provided, this is something that for any activity dealing with the research and wants to connect to the CBD have to have some considerations about the quality of the data and the requirement of the data itself. So the prerequisite of the data and the metadata within the indicator has to be publicly available, and it has to be come from the methodology that has been either published or peer-reviewed academic media or the journal. So meaning that any activity of the research that come up into the level of the publications, it is already met what the later on by the target within the CBD is qualified to be used by the country for their national report. And if you look the correlation between the CBD and the government relations, CBD as the Convention of the United Nations will be derived into, in these coming years, into the 30 years target, what we call it Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Frameworks. And within the 10 years achievement, each of the party, each of the national has to have a developed what we call it National Biodiversity Strategic Action Plan. And so for Indonesia, it's going to be Indonesia Biodiversity Strategic Action Plan. And this National Biodiversity Strategic Action Plan, it's led by the Bapenas along with the ministerial within Indonesia, and the content of the National Biodiversity Strategic Action Plan mostly is how Indonesia can support the global target, plus with the capacity of Indonesia as well to develop their own biodiversity framework for achieving the target of the national, like Indonesia, what we call it the Indonesia Emas 2045. Within the National Biodiversity Strategic Action Plan, which is showing how each of the country will meet the global as well as the national target, need to be reported globally, and that would be under what we could call it the national report. And the national report will later on, as the national focal point, will be organized by the Ministry of the Ministry of the Environment and the Forestry to generate, to combine, to collect all informations regarding the National Biodiversity Strategic Action Plan target, and then blend it as the national report to show how Indonesia has achieved their own national target on the biodiversity issue, as well as contributing to the global target within the biodiversity framework. So if you want to understand more about the Convention on the Biological Diversity, through the presentation that I will provide to you, you can click the link about what is the GBF goal and target. And also there is a link about how the monitoring has to be established and how to understand the headline indicators, which eventually, hopefully, can make it as your early inspiration on what type of the research that will be usable for the country as well for the global. Please do so. Click the link if you want to more understand about the CBD. And what I would like to slightly elaborate is to familiarize the target and the guidance notes on the indicator. This is the important thing for any newcomer who wants to understand the CBD, who wants to understand the target and the indicator. Therefore, it is much easier for the university students to develop their own proposals about the parameter, about the scope of the research. Please do click to the target and the guidance note. If you click that target and guidance note, you will guide it to explanations of each of the global target. Within the target, there is a very clear and deep insight about the philosophical of each of the target. That will be easy for you to understand and hopefully easy for you to get the idea what sort of the research that I can get involved as my, let's say, for your master or PhD or even for your BSc research. Even though nowadays the ministerial has mentioned that any thesis scripture is no longer as the prerequisite, but at least by understanding about each target based on the philosophy, why is the target important, the explanation of the target, the element, and the have a look the guiding question about how the national target setting and the most importantly is the indicators. Hopefully, they will make you more understanding about how important is the biodiversity as an entity that need to be keep monitor and do some research for the sake of the our own target, national target regarding the biology, national biological strategy action plan. Within the indicator, you will have some important informations, either about the headline indicators. Headline indicators, it's about what is a must as a global indicator, but that one can be adjusted to the within the component indicators to support the headline indicators. So for example, with the target 9 on the management of the wildlife species that is sustainable and benefit to the people, the indicator that need to be provided is the informations about number of people using wildlife resources, either for energy, food, cultures, and also there is a development, a standard indicator, a red list index, which is talking about the species used for food and medicine, and several indexing in the regard the wildlife species utilization. So if you look to this website, particularly on the understanding of the how the target is developed and how the target of the indicator need to be provided, we are hoping that there is some improvement of the understanding and have some really sharp uh, approach for any research that you are planning to do. If you want to more understand about each of the indicators, you can also go inside to the website on the science brief, which is talking about the specific issue, either from the ecosystem in the protected on the conserved area and the pollution, in which all of the manual is closely linked to make it much understanding about how the issue need to be collected and need to be provided as a supporting data. Again, to me, this information, it is a much valuable information for you as quote unquote a nowadays textbook regarding nowadays issue. So by learning about the definition about particular leap for you to directly learn about what the global assessment wants, and specifically if you are going using this manual for your research, we are really hoping that the research will be really up to date as what is needed currently by the national and by the global issue. So, in conclusions, the CBD provides an overview of the state of the art of the global conditions aim regarding the biodiversity issue. Secondly, the goals and the target of the CBD can be an inspiration, as I mentioned earlier, for you to the student within the university, how to get the topic, theme, or research scope for the university as what unquote a nowadays needed. And finally, your research that will be rely or using one of the background based on the CBD target, it is really helpful for the country to be later on be used as a national report to the global about what Indonesia has done and what the Indonesia current situations on the biodiversity issue that is reflecting what is the global need. So meaning that if you, the students from the university, is looking to the CBD and use as the background of the proposal and publish your research, this is actually what the country awaits. That will be shows that Indonesia contribution in the managing biodiversity is up to the level what the global is also need. I hope these short explanations on the CBD will give some kind of the initiation for you to start have a look to the CBD website and have a look and understand what the target is, how the target is being developed, how the indicator is being used. So, and through that website, we really hope that Indonesia in the coming 5 years' time, when it comes to write it down the national report for the first cycle, can provide a real good up-to-date data regarding the clear conditions of the Indonesia biodiversity. Thank you very much.
Okay, please give applause to Pak Gono. And we have less than 10 minutes question for two questions, yes? Okay.
Okay, thank you, moderator, and good afternoon, Professor Gono. I'm Syaiful Anwar from a private company in Indonesia, PT Agin Court Resource. I just want to know, this is maybe related with a previous presenter from Ministry of Environment and Forestry regarding Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. As we see before that, Prof, National Biodiversity Strategy Action Plan that already issued by the government from Bapenas, as your presentation before. Is it already as the reference for the regulation in Indonesia? As I know before that we have a new regulation Perpres number 1 in 2023. Just correct me if I'm wrong. Is it this regulation referred to the National Biodiversity Strategy Action Plan? And how we can get this document or the contents of National Biodiversity Strategy Action Plan? Because I think as the private company or public company, they have to refer to this National Biodiversity Strategy Action Plan to make the program match with the government strategy, and also based on the COP or Global Biodiversity Framework. And then the second, who the pupil or institution that involved in CBD convention, and how many times of the convention will be conducted, and is it the CBD convention produced the MGBF or Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework? That's the second, Professor. And then the third, we know that we have the IFC, International Financial Management, number 6, that talk about biodiversity conservation and sustainable management of living natural resource in 2012. Just correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe there are new one or the update one, because as I see in the website still 2012. So IFC 6 standardization, is it in line with the Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, and is it also in line with Global Reporting Index? Why? Because some of the company that listed in the all of the financial agency in the world or in Indonesia, there are must have the system referred to IFC or GRI, or biodiversity system or other biodiversity system. And then the last, as we know that in Indonesia or in our industrial management in the world, that all of the operational system referred to the International Standardization Organization, correct me if I'm wrong, ISO. For environmental, we know that environmental management system, and then for energy, we talk about energy management system, and then for safety, we know as occupational health and safety management system, and another. And then, how about the biodiversity? Is there any management system that can be as a reference for the industry to refer this? Not only public industry, but also private industry. Maybe that's all, Prof. Thank you, moderator.
Okay, continue to the second question, Pak Gono, so we can answer in
So many.
time. Yeah.
Okay, I hope I can answer because some of the question is not, to be honest, with it beyond.
Pak Gono,
Yeah.
excuse me.
Yes.
We will continue to the second question, and then you can answer in one time. Yeah. Okay, please.
Yes, thank you for this opportunity. Good afternoon, Prof. Gono Semiadi. I have a question like that. In previous, after ratification of CBD, we have two authority responsible to diversity in Indonesia. The first is Management Authority, it's Ministry of Forestry and Environmental, and the second is Scientific Authority. It means Indonesian Scientific Institute, we call it LIPI. My question is, after LIPI now switch off to the BRINs, what is the government institutions responsible acts as the scientific authority in this case? And the second question, how we provide the collaboration between the authority with like universities, NGO, scientifics, so we can collect the data, data or information diversity in Indonesia, so we can have the national data about the diversity. Because I think this is important. Until now, we can check what is the website or information we can get information about the diversity in Indonesia. This is from this we are the weak to bargaining with like IUCN, CITES, because we cannot providing the strong data information about diversity. And the third, and then who government institution responsible to collect this national data about diversity. Thank you.
Okay, Pak Gono. Please, we have a limited time.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll try to answer from the first question or at once. Jadi terima kasih Pak. Regarding the national focal point with regard the CBD, it is the Ministry of the KLHK, and in particular is the Dijen KSDAE. So that is for the NFP of the CBD. And with regard about national, with regard with the IPSAP, or National Biodiversity Strategic Action Plan, currently the NBSAP or IPSAP is still under the establishment by the Bappenas, and my understanding, eventually there will be a public hearing from the whole stakeholders, either from the private or from the within the government or from the local community and from the NGO. And indeed, actually, we are the Bappenas is now still in the process of establishing the BSAP with all the national target, and hopefully within 2 or 3 months, Bappenas will invite it a public hearing about the first draft of the NBSAP. Once has been adopted by the Bappenas within all the ministry, I believe that the document will be open to public, and then everybody will get that the IPSAP manual or the IPSAP document. That is regarding the IPSAP. And yes, with the national, with the IPSAP, it is about the partially about the implementations of the global target, and within the global target in the Kunming-Montreal Global Diversity Work, it's always hands to hands with the IFCC target. Yes, indeed, that's about this is the concept of the all of the global convention that is related to the biodiversity, they always hands to hands, and each of the core document will always be supporting each other, but not going to be as a duplications. So within the National Biodiversity Strategic Action Plan, or IPSAP, there will be a reflections of the how the national target that will be related to the which is that connecting the finance to be honest, scientific authority within the CBD, what we call it under the research activity. So I cannot really answer the finance, but
we have a pure connection and we cannot hear your voice, Pak Gono. Or if, because we have a very limited time, maybe we can postpone Pak Gono's answer to the final after we finish the third session. Yeah. So I'm sorry with the situation. So we are coming to the next presentation. We have Arjun Gopalaswamy, Ph.D. Is the founder and chief scientist, Carnassials Global, and already with us now. And the stage is yours. Thank you.
Hello. Hello, thank you for inviting me. Pleasure to be here. I've worked with Indonesians before, and so it's always nice to see everyone again. Should I share my screen? All right. Are we all right?
Okay, perfect.
Okay. All right, good evening, everyone. I think we are day 2 of this session. Too bad that I could not physically be there. I love giving in-person talks, not so much on Zoom, but the situation precluded me from coming there at this time. So good evening, everyone. Happy to be here. I am going to talk a little bit about wildlife conservation partnerships, particularly to do with monitoring of the kinds of species that I have put up here, such as tigers or lions, based on my research work of over the last 2 decades. And I would be arguing for the case that when we think about bringing people together, which is kind of very important, which is why this whole session was put in place, when we think about bringing people together, what should be the basis for bringing people together? And I argue that there should be a strong scientific imperative to do this. So I will first, my initial part of the talk will be about certain problems I have seen, especially to do with tigers, and then some of the solutions I have found individually and almost always collectively about how we address them to actually put in place robust and sound collaborative monitoring programs. So I'm just giving you a couple of statements that are kind of widely held views because it's there in BBC, in CNN, etc. We've heard that India's tiger population has doubled from the year 2006 to 2018. We've also heard Africa's lion numbers has declined by 43% from 1993 to 2014. Now, these are so widely amplified in the media that many times, if science has to participate in this discussion, which it should because counting wildlife is a scientific practice, many times we observe that it gets completely buried in all the media hype around claims. Now, this causes a big problem when we actually work in practice because many times efficient conservation programs are not encouraged, but the most hyped conservation programs instead get encouraged. And that is a problem for conservation. So I'm going to briefly get into the techniques. I do not know how many scientists are sitting in the room, but essentially there is this big desire and usually politically motivated for us to take some of these charismatic species like tigers or lions or elephants and count them all up. So we want to know what are the number of tigers, let's say, in Indonesia? What are the number of tigers in Malaysia? What's the number of elephants in Africa? So these are these sweeping questions that do come and very often are driven by a larger public interest and not really based on what science or even what the species want. So now this is a very hard thing to do. So if someone says, okay, I want all the number of tigers in India, it's a very hard thing to do. So there has been one experiment called index calibration, which was thought of as a solution to this problem, where the idea is that we've all heard of camera traps. I hope it's very ubiquitously used in field studies these days, and especially to count tigers. We set a bunch of camera traps typically in areas that's about 500 square kilometers up to say 1,500 square kilometers in important populations. We get photographs, we look at their pictures and use a strong rigorous method, say something like capture recapture, and find out abundance. Now these are possible in very, very small areas, but we want to know number of tigers all over the country. So what do? The thinking was very simple. So we go to a few places, collect data rigorously, and then try to match them with something else called an index. An index is something like a sign, which is not really the number of tigers, but something related to tigers. All right, but the problem we have found, and science has shown this, is that there is a huge variation. So the two blue lines that we see in this graph, this is a simple graph of animal abundance, number of tigers, versus the number of signs that we tend to detect. And we found like there were two experiments, each represented by the blue lines, giving completely different relationships. And the true relationship should have been somewhere near the red line. That's the mean relationship. So there is such a large variation. If we want to get total counts for an area, for the country, you get very erratic answers. So what's the real use of something like this? Furthermore, I'll have to go back to the time of Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin proposed something called the occupancy abundance relationship, which is very widely used these days. We use both the terms, occupancy and abundance. One is to depict the range of a species, and abundance is the actual number of a species. And there's a nice monotonic relationship that looks something like this. Charles Darwin in 17th century was really interested to know why certain species had a steep curve and why certain species had a more kind of slow curve, but both are monotonically increasing, but they had different levels. And he was quite fascinated to know that. And obviously, as a biologist interested in the field, we are also interested in this relationship. But When I looked at the India's Tiger Survey, this was published in 2019 in Conservation Science and Practice, we found a completely inverted curve. And this is very, very difficult to explain scientifically. So though the claim was India's tiger numbers are going up, and given that India holds 70% of the world's tigers, it means the global tiger numbers are also going up, but they are happening in such a bizarre fashion, it's very difficult to attribute these to actual tigers, or is it very difficult to attribute it to anything scientific? So what that actually means, if you take the science-based view of this problem, it actually means that though a lot of human resources were spent in it, these were record-breaking efforts, a huge number of human resources and expense and camera trap equipment all put into place in these surveys, and all these claims of increasing tiger numbers were faulty. And it actually meant that we have to reanalyze all these data immediately. But now here's the problem. These are so invested in the media, with the politicians, and in the international media, you can't do that. So where does science even fit in? Because now on the one hand, you have these claims, but scientifically many are disproven. But how do we kind of rectify the situation? It brings about a real world conservation problem. All right, and more recently, this was just about 2 weeks ago when India announced their latest tiger numbers, I also observed that there were fundamental problems even in places where they had done rigorous surveys. So not just the indices, even in places where they have done the rigorous surveys, which means basically they are completely unreliable. And furthermore, in 2019, there was also a journalistic article in Nature which looked into whether all these data could be transparent for other scientists to scrutinize, to ensure there is sufficient rigor, even just for academic curiosity, can these be investigated? But the problem was, it was found that these data are just not open anywhere in the public domain for anyone to work on them. So you have the numbers, but you just have to take it. And that has almost become the global narrative, which is defining all the conservation, all the tiger conservation initiatives. So a group of us who have been working on large-scale surveys wrote an article. This was not limited to tigers, but also on what we've observed with lions in Africa. A lot of claims are out there about changes in numbers, about changes in distributions in very large scales, and actually don't have a strong scientific basis. And we argue that actually in such cases, if the science is poor, actually science, rather than helping conservation, starts kind of confusing the situation so much with such large variations that actually more politics will kick in, because they use the word science, but there is so much variation that actually you can report anything and it will almost always be justified by science. So this is a problem, right? So, then it becomes imperative to ask the question, what do we mean by good science? And when it comes to monitoring species like tigers or lions, these are landscape level species. So when we talk about a population of tigers, even think about Indonesia, you talk about a population of tigers that's, let's say, 50 tigers or 60 tigers, now you're suddenly talking of about 5,000 square kilometers or 10,000 square kilometers suddenly in those kinds of habitats. So this means that in a landscape level sort of species, putting good science is not that easy. And almost always we need three things to come together. That's good questions, good methods, and good data. And I've seen a lot of work where questions posed are very poor. For example, there's a famous national park called Corbett National Park, which is teeming of tigers, plenty of tigers. And if you ask the question, what's the occupancy rate of tigers in national park? We know it's one. We know tigers are there, but quite often we will see that such questions are still out there in the literature, for which we already know the answers, but a study simply goes on and we waste a lot of resources. Similarly, with poor methods, I was talking about occupancy abundance relationship. If you don't measure something called detection probability, we get very spurious patterns, and that can be problematic. And poor data, yes, this is, we know many times, lack of sample sizes or poor data quality. But you need all these three to come together to give you good science. Now, the issue of collaboration. Why collaboration is important? Now, if you see here in this slide, I've put a bunch of decisions that we normally are confronted with when designing monitoring programs, all right? And deliberately here, you will see there are a few purely field-based questions. All right, should I walk and collect data? Should I drive and collect data? Should I put camera traps? Should I collect fecal DNA? These are field-based questions. Then there are statistical questions. Should I use conditional likelihoods? So should I use full likelihoods? Then there are ecological questions. Should I use the source sink theory to evaluate this population, or should I use metapopulation dynamics? And there are even sampling related questions. Should I use a model based framework? Should I use a design framework? All right. Now, the reason I've put all these questions together is more often than not, people work in isolation. Because let's say I've worked all my life in the field, I only take up questions to do with camera traps and I forget about the others. But the problem is you need all of them to work in harmony. And this will not happen if you do not engage everyone in the process and all the expertise comes in. All right. So typically, when we talk about wildlife population monitoring, there are two schools of counting wildlife. One is what we call the design-based view, where we use sampling theory, just like how we have exit polls, etc. Then we have the model-based theory, where we actually develop statistical models that looks like the species we're interested in. Let's say it looks like lion populations or tiger populations. So sometimes in rare cases in countries, I worked in Gabon with WCS and ANPN or others, we could design these design-based surveys for monitoring elephants all over the country, right? Counting all over the country, using samples. But very rarely do these questions actually come in practice because it's a rare country where 85% of their country is forests. So it's something, I mean, Indonesia also has a very large proportion of forests, so you can consider design-based alternatives. But more commonly, we are interested in what we call model-based approaches. So this is Kenya, and we went to survey about 10 populations, all in black in this map here. And lions are in other places too, but the main source populations are in black. So the idea was to use the source sink theory to monitor or count these lions. Again, collaborations is key because this is a humongous effort. And fortunately, there are a lot of good methods already available in the form of books and manuals. One has to just use them. But the problem is, if you don't collaborate, you won't even choose one of these books. So this is where bringing biostatisticians and kind of field biologists are very important in getting surveys, at least in the design stage, correct. Now, this was a slide. We had been to the ICCB in Kigali recently, and this is just a simple representation of what it took to survey all the major populations of lions in Kenya and Uganda. So this is just a few of us. This is just like 10 of us, but there were about 500 people involved in the whole survey. And this also includes rangers. I mean, rangers knowing how to execute cutting edge Bayesian capture-recapture models for lions. Then we have the people from the ministry, and then you also have people from Uganda Wildlife Authority, Kenya Wildlife Service. But the common thing is, though everyone is at a different skill level, we were unified when it came to the scientific vision. And almost everybody had an idea of not just how to collect field data, but also to do the analysis. Everyone had, irrespective of what their actual training or background was. So when we chose, this is just to give you an example why that actually it took this whole team plenty of discussions to come up with the model. So even when we choose, let's say, a model, this is very statistically what I've put up, but I'm trying to convince you that even the statistics involved is driven by field realities, and we make the choice based on all these factors. This is where collaborations are important. In the end, this sort of represents the sort of work that went into this. Almost 50, this is Kenya, almost 40 NGOs were involved, more than 400 people got involved in the surveys, right from the design stage to data collection to the analysis, which are all very challenging. And you can just see the effort that went in, about 105,000 kilometers of drive effort looking for lions, and about 40,000 kilometers of walk effort. So it's all possible. And the thing about a collaborative monitoring approach and having a science-based vision is, it's the science which is driving everybody. So people bring resources from their end. It's very, very difficult to always say, look, I'll bring all the money, or even for the government to bring all the money to do this. But when we join hands and there's skin in the game for everyone, everybody contributes to the process. And at the end of the day, where does the joy come in? When we see results. Now, this is just a correlation plot. This is a bad correlation plot to say if things go badly, we don't get very good results. All these parameters should look independent, but they don't entirely look independent. But when we put in good effort, we start getting fantastic results that look like this. And this is absolutely gorgeous. If you're a scientist, you would just love to see something like this. But when everyone do participate in a scientific agenda and they see this and are seen through the whole process, I believe there is a great power in making science rule the roost for bringing people together for wildlife monitoring and in terms of also their conservation. So what's my take home here? In the end, monitoring programs, they must provide answers. They should not just be claims and you just confuse the scientific situation where the more money we invest, the lesser we seem to know about some of the important species. No, it shouldn't be that way. It should be transparent. Actually, any monitoring program should say we welcome questioning. We want to be criticized. And that is when actually we progress much better. And it should be nimble enough. There are kind of new methods being developed every month or every week, literally, in scientific in scientific literature. We should keep the program should be kind of nimble enough to make important adjustments, not adjust every time, but to make important adjustments when evolving. Because at the end, we want science to actually guide and not serve conservation decisions and policies. So I just have a lot of these institutes and a lot of others and participants who are all part of these surveys. I really didn't get much into this, but this is just to give an idea of why collaborations are important and why it's essential for getting science to participate in the conservation process. So, thank you.
Okay. We have 10 minutes discussion for 2 questions. No, from the room. Maybe we have questions from online participants. Could somebody read it? We have a very limited time. Oh, No question for Arjun.
Okay.
Last call, questions? Yeah, it's a PhD presentation. PhD student presentation. Oh, PhD students, yeah. Okay, if there's nothing, no questions, thank. Oh, yeah. From
I have a question, a short question.
Oh yeah,
Just a
Pak
short
Gono.
question.
Please.
I just want to just a short answer regarding the statement that the tiger in India has doubled in this to 2006 to 2018. Would that be really because the population increased or due to the solid methodology that has been established?
Yeah, so basically, if you see what is happening in the scientific literature around these numbers, and if you see what is happening in the statements made, let's say by the government or even the media, it's almost getting to be polar opposite. And the big problem here is the methodologies don't reveal that at all. And if they have revealed, it is with a lot of flaws. All right, flaws being so dramatic that literally we are expecting some very, very, very unusual behavior of tigers to make this a reality. So that is where we are having problems. So the scientific community have always been pointing out some serious limitations, and they've even been suggesting better alternatives, but the methods is based on very, very very pure, very poor scientific basis. So they are not reliable at all.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, short question, yeah? Okay.
Hi Arjun, I'm Namrita.
Hello. Hello.
So my question is sort of based on another presentation that was presented today by Arjun. He presented on integrated models. And so in your experience with tigers or lions, are you looking at it as just like a single species, like so you're modeling it for single species, or is it multi-species modeling? And if it's for single species, what has been your experience with integrated models, and have you tried it on multiple species in these landscapes? And if you have, then what has been your experience with integrated models then? When I say integrated, I mean by using data from different methodologies. So you're using camera traps, and you're using also tracks, right? From patrols and things like that. So yeah, what has been your experience with running these models, and what has the results showed you till now?
Okay, so I mean, the term integrated models, they're like various definitions. I have used one form wherein I've integrated, at least in my research, data from camera traps and even genetics. Because what's key to know is what's the statistical framework that is being employed. And more often than not, we tend to apply hierarchical models these days, which will separate the ecological process from the observation process, which is very helpful. And when you do that, it's very, very relevant to actually bring to more than two data sources into the same analysis. And you do experience increase in precision. That said, when it comes to tracks, it has been problematic everywhere. The substrates cause such a big variation and often nothing to do with animal abundance itself. So the more we move out of this whole idea of using tracks, they're very, very useful to identify species presence. The moment we use it for estimating abundance, it's all over the place. So that's where I would draw the line. So I think as a field technique, it's still useful, but you have to target the right question with those field data.
Okay. Okay, Arjun, thank you for your presentation, yeah. And
Thank
on
you.
behalf of all participants, I wish your mother have speedy recovery.
Oh, thank
Our
you very
prayer
much.
is with her. Okay, give applause to our presenter. And I think we have Pak Gono already in the line. And Pak Gono, we have 5 minutes to continue the answer.
Okay, thank you very much. I just hoping I can answer for the second question with regard the who is the scientific authority after the dissolving of the LIPI. It is BRIN as the scientific authority alongside with the management authority. And within BRIN, there is a division, what we call it Sekretariat Keanekaragaman, Sekretariat Keilmiahan SKIKH, Sekretariat Kemenangan Ilmiah Keanekaragaman Hayati. That is the division which is take responsibility for giving the advice and giving the recommendation with regard in the biodiversity issue. Now, if the question is regarding the data about the biodiversity data, or so-called in Indonesia, we call it WALI data, honestly, I cannot really answer very precisely, but if we reflect to the used to be in the LIPI as the scientific authority, which is nowadays is BRIN, it is responsible to have to give the answers about the status of the numbers, the wealth of the Indonesian species. So that's which is the scope of the scientific authority means. But for the website, yes, I do accept there is some difficulties in providing a new website. We used to have Indobiosis, but nowadays after under the BRIN, the website is still under current not a maintenance, but they are still developing a new versions and is not yet up to the level which is required as the scientific website. So there is a problem. But with regard the informations of the situations of the biodiversity, it is going to be the responsibility of each of the ministerial, like KLHK, as is already mentioned by Pa Wiratno before. They do have a lot of data from the Jagawana, and they try to develop about the data and then bring it into the information level and provide it in the website of the KLHK. Similarly, with the KKP, they do have responsibility to provide the situations of the current biodiversity within the marine, put in the website, and those information from each of the ministerials under the CBD scheme that has to be linked to the what we call it the clearinghouse mechanism of the CBD in each part national. So in Indonesia, the ministerial that is in charge for the clearinghouse mechanism is the KLHK. So I hope you can, if to start with, if you want to know about the current situation of the biodiversity, then the first step, perhaps try to get into the clearinghouse mechanism website, or you can go inside to each of the ministerial website that provide the information of the biodiversity. Perhaps that's all I can answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Gono. So we are coming into the end of this session. Thank you for excellent speakers and also for all attendants who are still staying in the room. And that's all. The stage is back to committee. Thank you.
Okay, please give applause for Mas Haryawan Agung Wahyudi. Thank you very much for Mas Haryawan Agung Wahyudi from Copenhagen Zoo. And we have finally come to the end part of Symposium 6, Partnership and Collaboration in Wildlife Conservation. But before we close this session, we have photo session, and I invite all of the participants to take position.
So please everyone, we invite us to join the stage to get some wonderful photos together. So please everyone, especially the organizing committee. Please welcome to join us to take the photo sessions. Thank you. Ready? Yeah, free photos, please. Poses.
Okay.
Alright, L poses.
Okay,
Thank you,
thank you very
everyone.
much.
All right, the excellencies, distinguished guests, participants, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for everyone. We exactly have had a productive and inspiring time together. And this event about to come at to the very end. All right, we hope you have found the presentation on this conference are informative and helpful. And don't forget, tomorrow